As a publisher of classical curriculum, I would like to apologize for the great books. For the many authors among the Greeks, the Romans, and Christendom, they are an incredible heritage worth preserving, and here is my apology.
What?
Perhaps I should define my terms. Apology. Something said or written in defense or justification of what appears to others to be wrong, such as Tertullian's Apology for Christianity. Perhaps now more than ever, the great books and our cultural inheritance of Western civilization is in need of this kind of apology. We want to make the case that an essential part of a robust Christian education is being equipped to make an apology or a defense not only of your faith, but also of the cultural soil in which Christianity grew, the authors, books, works, and history found in the great books. A defense of a Christian inheritance of the great books. And we'll do that by introducing you to some of these authors through our emails, where you will be able to receive a small taste of such an education. Old Western culture isn't the only curriculum to study the great books. There are many good ways to do it, but it is very unique in its narrative, story-like approach that is accessible and loved by teens, usable alone or in groups or family settings, yet engages with the ideas and texts to a degree that educators have told us it is their favorite tool for conveying a love of learning and the great books to students of any age. I want to share a short letter with you from one of the American founding fathers, John Adams, to his then 17-year-old son, John Quincy, who would later become the 6th President of the United States. My dear son, as the war in which your country is engaged will probably hereafter attract your attention more than it does at this time, and as the future circumstances of your country may require other wars, as well as councils and negotiations similar to those which are now in agitation, I wish to turn your thoughts early to such studies as will afford you the most solid instruction and improvement for the part which may be allotted you to act on the stage of life. There is no history perhaps better adapted to this useful purpose than that of Thucydides, an author of whom I hope you will make yourself perfect master in original language, which is Greek, the most perfect of all human languages. You may be relieved to know that students are not required to read Thucydides in the original Greek in Old Western culture. They can read it in English. But it is one of the many works they will read and understand, joining generations of men and women prepared for the stage of life through these works. The classical education of the American founding fathers and of the reformers and medievals before them, as well as the early church fathers, was not a coincidence. It was a tool they used to prepare themselves and their children for effective lives well lived. At Roman Roads Press, we are not canceling the classics. On the contrary, our mission and our motto is to equip families to inherit the humanities.
Is that coffee and bourbon?
No, it's not. But I mixed coffees and it really strengthened everything. Hey, y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Lab Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the Water Boy, and I can't wait to be in Texas with you guys October 31st through November 2nd. Dr. White had surgery today. Went well.
He's going to make it?
He's excited to be there.
So
He sounds like he's going to make it.
Only thing we're worried about is Dr. White going to be at the
Steve
conference.
Dace, we still got a special guest I can't announce yet, but we're in the process of negotiating his speaking spot.
When are you going to tell us?
I've already told you guys. We've texted about it.
Neil, did he tell us? I don't think he told us.
Neil doesn't even know.
I don't even remember. So prodigalamerica.com. Get your tickets today.
Yeah.
Kepler is an online marketplace for classical Christian education that assures parents maintain their agency without forfeiting the assistance and expertise of qualified conservative Christian teachers. Kepler offers university model courses in the classical tradition that fit your schedule and your budget. Visit www.kepler.education, and use their simple search tool to find the course and the teacher that meets your child's needs, or simply ask for help to get assistance from a real human being. I love that. We're so grateful to have with us today Mr. Rick Green is a former Texas State representative, practicing attorney, and national broadcaster, writer, and speaker, as well as author and executive producer of Constitution Alive, America's most engaging and entertaining study of the U.S. Constitution. Rick and his wife, Kara, founded Patriot Academy, an elite leadership training program specializing in applied civics with a biblical, historical, and constitutional foundation. Rick, thanks so much for joining us on Cross Politic.
Thanks, guys. Good to be with you. I think I got to rewrite that intro. You already had 2 strikes against me, an attorney and a recovering politician. So, anyway.
Are we watching you?
Yeah, we're going to keep our eye on you. So tell us about Patriot Academy. What caused you to start this, and what exactly is it?
Yeah, man, I was sitting on the floor of the Texas House 23 years ago, and frustrated. I felt like, man, I got all these people that got elected saying I'm a conservative, I'm a Bible believer. And then they were voting completely opposite of those things, and decided, hey, we're going to raise up a new generation. We're going to start a youth leadership program. We're going to bring young people into the state capitol, 16 to 25-year-olds, right when you're trying to figure out, what do I really believe? Not just what does mom and dad believe, but what do I believe? And so we started doing that 23 years ago. We'd bring them in from all over the country to the Texas Capitol. They'd spend a week with me, and we'd have great speakers come in, pounding in biblical worldview, founding fathers philosophy, teaching them skills like speaking, media, all those things that they would use, whatever arena they were going to go into. And we just raised up good citizens, biblical citizens, and they went into every area of the culture. And then we started doing constitution coaching. So I ran for Texas Supreme Court back in 2010. Barely lost, 1 vote per precinct. Don't tell me every vote doesn't count. Anyway, wow. I'm not bitter at all. But that was my chance to really talk about the Constitution around the state. And a bunch of people said, man, why don't you do a Constitution class? And that has developed into our Constitution Coach program, now with 28,000 Constitution coaches out there using our videos to teach their friends and family and people in their community about biblical citizenship.
Rick, so, I mean, how many years? Did you say 25?
23 years, man. I used to have hair. It used to be dark. It's
I used to hair.
You used to be dark. Did he say he used to be dark? Wait. Do you know Al Green? Is it because you got Green in your last name? Are y'all related?
That's right.
I knew it. I knew it.
I used to have hair too. Rick.
Wait a second.
So 23 years though, that's long enough to have some of these kids, young people, go on and actually do some stuff. I mean, is there? I mean, what's your report card? I mean, it's one thing.
Man.
I mean, we do this in, a lot of different areas, Christian schools, churches, but 20 years in, what fruit are you seeing in the Texas State House?
Yeah, we've got, we got state legislators elected all over the country. We've got members of Congress that have been through our programs, tons of school board members and local offices, hundreds of those. And then, of course, most importantly, people have taught their children and their grandchildren, so that we're solving the civic literacy problem. Ignorance problem by introducing biblical and civic literacy. I think all the bad stuff we're seeing in our culture comes from the petri dish of civic and biblical ignorance. That's why we have the virus of bad government all over this country. We solve it with civic literacy. And, now we've got about 4,000 graduates of our Leadership Congress, which is the flagship. That's what we started with 23 years ago. And then 1 million graduates of our biblical citizenship class. So we're seeing really, really good fruit. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not enough. We need to do about 10 times what we've done over the last 20 years. We need to do 10 times that in the next 2 years before the 250th birthday of the nation. But we're growing at 400% a year.
Wow.
So I believe we can get there if the Lord keeps blessing it.
I wonder do you know Gary DeMar and God and Government?
Gary DeMar. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Just had dinner with him about a year ago in Houston, actually. And he used to run our website, actually. His Liberty Alliance we used to be with those guys, and they did all of our stuff.
Man, he knows
great folks.
I'm just these are tests. I'm testing Rick. I don't know how real this guy is.
He's not afraid to be associated with Gary DeMar.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question. A friend of mine down in Texas, actually, guy by the name of Nate Fisher.
You just jumping right off the top ropes.
I'm going right in.
It's public. It's on Twitter.
It's on Twitter.
Top ropes.
He writes over the last couple of days. He says basically, if you believe that we live in a constitutional republic, you're stuck in a nostalgic fantasy. He says we live in an administrative judicial bureaucracy with almost no relationship to the form of government that was actually established by the Constitution. He says, I understand nostalgia for the Constitution or longing to restore the principles the founders established, but if you will not accept the reality that this is long gone, and if you judge others based on fidelity to a set of principles that govern no one, then you're a fool. Rick,
Are you a fool?
what are your thoughts on this?
Here's how I say it in my class as I'm standing in Independence Hall teaching the class in the room where the Constitution was framed. I say, we no longer live under the Constitution. So this document right here behind me does not govern the United States. We live under the Constitution. We live under a court-created concoction. It's literally a witch's brew that a bunch of folks in black robes stood around and threw a phrase in here and a phrase in there, and they recreated this country into something it was never intended to be. I think Nate nails it when he talks about the bureaucracy as well. So we have a fourth branch of government, not in the Constitution, but in the Constitution. And that fourth branch is unaccountable. It's unelected. It's massive. It's truly the deep state. It's what people, when people say the swamp, it's real. It's hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats, not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level. When you have to go to your local government and ask permission to do something with your land, you're not free. When you have to ask permission, you're not free. When the government gets to micromanage you and tell you how much of your land you can use, they own the property. When you pay more in property taxes than you do in your own mortgage, you're renting your property from the government. You're serfs on feudal land. So I think Nate is 100% correct. I don't think we have to stay there, though. I think that's where we are because of civic ignorance. When people begin to realize the proper role of government and their role as a biblical citizen, when they stop being the wicked and slothful servant who is burying the talent of freedom, and they start to be the good and faithful servant who is working that talent, multiplying that talent, we can turn the nation around. But as long as the church is silent, as long as pastors are wusses who are afraid to speak to the issues of the day, who somehow have decided that the Lord is only Lord over their life at church and not Lord over their life at work and at home and in their government, until the pastors change and the churches change and the Christians get engaged, we'll continue to live under what I call the Constitution.
All right, enough Gary DeMar. We get it. You got your bona fides. All right, you're in. I am interested. When do you think, though, that we lost the Constitution?
Well, it was step by step, 80 years of Supreme Court decisions unanswered by the states overruling them. We used to do that. You go back to the 11th Amendment when the Founding Fathers were still in charge. Supreme Court handed down a decision the states didn't like. In 4 months, constitutional amendment overruled Chisholm v. Georgia, the Supreme Court decision they didn't like. We should be doing that all the time. I think it really started changing in 1913 when we did the 17th Amendment, which starts our election of senators by the popular vote in the state rather than the legislature electing those senators. And that's a major structural change because the states were able to stop the feds from creating new programs because the Senate wouldn't pass new stuff that the House created. I'll give you an example. I was on the Ag Committee when I was a House member. Well, if we still chose the U.S. senators and the federal government started talking about having a federal Department of Agriculture, I'd be picking up my phone and calling John Cornyn and Ted Cruz and saying, you do that, you're gone. You're not going to have your job anymore. We have a state Department of Agriculture. We don't need a federal one. And hang up, and they would do their job and kill that bill. Well, now the U.S. senators come home and they're a direct election by the popular vote. So they make promises. They're going to bring on the bacon. They're going to get money for the library. They're going to get money for this, money for that. They buy votes. And the federal government, if you look in 1913, it's like a hockey stick curve, the growth from 1913. We also did the income tax that year and the Federal Reserve. 1913 was really the beginning of the destruction of the Constitution.
Woodrow Wilson.
So then I think there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, you're saying the Constitution is gone, but if it's gone, you still expect me to somehow fight with it?
Yeah, so let me be clear. When I don't say it's gone. I say that right now it's almost dormant. It's not being used and it's not being followed because the people are not demanding it. We're the boss. They work for us, but we have to act like the boss. If we start a company and we put a bunch of people in charge running our company and we go on vacation for 10 years, what do we expect when we come back? The whole thing's probably not what we envision it to be, or it's fallen apart completely. So we have to be engaged, constantly holding them accountable. That's not just on election day. That's showing up at the legislative hearings. That's calling them, writing them, building relationships with them, constantly holding them accountable. That's the citizen's duty and an expectation of what we should do. But we have to restore the Constitution. And the only way to restore the Constitution, the original intent of the Constitution, or what the people would agree with a vast majority, is through amendments that overrule the Constitution. Because the other side says that they're following the Constitution. Because what are they following? The court-interpreted version of the Constitution. It's about this thick if you look at it with all the Supreme Court decisions. We need to overrule that. And there's only one way to do that, And it's through the amendment process in Article 5. That's how you restore the Constitution to the original intent.
So I was just going to ask you, like, it's gotten so bad. I mean, Knox and I were just talking before we got online with you, but like, even Frederick Douglass was questioning whether he should throw out the Constitution back in what years are we talking, like 18 whatever. And like I was just thinking, like, but the corruption is like metastasized. I mean, you talk about 1913. And then, again, add another 100 years and all the federal departments, all the administrative state, all this stuff. And I was just going to ask you, like, so where do we start? Like, where do we start? And you're saying we should start with constitutional amendments. And if so, like, which ones?
Yeah. Well, first of all, recognizing that there's a lot of pieces to this solution. There's no silver bullet. So there's no one amendment that would solve it, or even the amendment process. We got to have revival in the land. So we got to teach people. It's kind of like William Wilberforce. Whenever he fought to end slavery in England, he said God had called him to two great things, right? To end slavery and a restoration of manners, a restoration of morals. He said we have to make being good fashionable again. So that piece has to be done as well. But then at the same time, we have to work on the structures. The reason America is the greatest nation in the history of the world is not because our people were better. It's because our political and economic structures had the checks and balances to stop corruption as quickly as possible. You're never going to get rid of it. You're always going to have corruption because guess what? We have human beings that we actually elect to office or put in place. And so with the checks and balances, though, you can limit that. And the self-interest of the states pulling against the feds, and the feds pulling against the states, and the local government pulling against the state pulling against those things that we created in our nation because of, by the way, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is evil, no man can know it. That's why the founders did separation of powers. It wasn't just Montesquieu's spirit of the laws. They absolutely were applying the Bible to the way that they designed government. So it starts with us. We have to get educated. We have to know what these things are. We have to become informed citizens. We have to teach our children and grandchildren. So in our home, the smallest political unit, we revive this thing. Then we teach our friends and family. We host Constitution classes in our homes, in our churches. Man, we got Constitution classes going right now in bait and tackle shops, Harley Davidson dealerships. Had a guy tell me the other day he's teaching the class in his funeral parlor, which was really weird to me until I thought about the fact that Democrats vote dead people all the time. So why not teach
Makes
them?
sense,
Anyway,
yeah.
we're doing them everywhere. But it begins like that. Get educated and then start chipping away at it. Take over your local school board. Take over your local city council. Take over the water district. Start doing a local office, and eventually we'll get to state and federal. But it's not going to happen with electing Donald Trump as president or any other one person. No one can be sent to Washington, D.C. and drain the swamp from within. It's got to happen locally and in the states and overrule the federal government and make them get back inside their box. There's only 17 things in that document behind me that they're allowed to do, and they're doing 17 million things right now they're not supposed to be doing.
Wow.
That's right.
So we're on a mission to make magazines great again. Subscribe to our Fight, Laugh, Feast magazine. This is a quarterly mini book-like experience packed full of a variety of authors that includes theologically driven cultural commentary, a psalm of the quarter, recipes for feasting with your families, laughter sprinkled throughout the glossy pages, and more. Sign up your church, sign up your grumpy uncle while you're at it. Sign up the Pope. I just saw him. He was on Twitter today saying Pope things.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Disclaimer, this magazine will guarantee various responses, and Cross Politics is not held liable for any of them. Reading the whole magazine may cause the theological maturation, possibly encourage your kids to take the Lord's Supper with you, and will likely cause you to randomly chuckle and enjoy at God's wondrous world. In addition to all of the above, if you're a Platinum Club member, you'll get magazine subscription for free. If you're not a club member yet, sign up today. 4 issues, $60 per year, unless you're a Platinum Club member. That's it. Go to fightlaughfeast.com right now and get your subscription.
Rick, you're a Christian nationalist.
What do you mean by that? I always ask, what do you mean by that? They always come up with these nasty terms. You're a dominionist. You're a Christian nationalist. You're the grand poobah of the, I don't know what they're going to come up with next. I'm a patriot that loves my country. And if you go back to Webster's dictionary, 1828, closest one to the time of the founders, Webster defined patriotism as loving your country and defending her values. And I think that's what we have to do. That's what a biblical citizen does. They use that term to try to make guys like you and me, well, not us, because y'all are lions, not sheep like I am, but a lot of Christians are sheep, not lions. And so they hear that term and they think, oh, Christian nationalist, that sounds nasty. That's like a Nazi or something. I don't want to be that. So I better not get involved. I better not say anything. I better keep my faith to this myself. And they've been very effective at silencing a lot of the church using those nasty terms.
The reason I'm asking is because I think that right now a lot of people, especially inside of the Christian nationalist camp, heard what you said, and there's some people who are like, that's a lot of work. What you're asking for. And I think part of what happens when people begin to wake up and see where we really are, they really want to live in the world that they're imagining, but they don't want to necessarily sacrifice for it. And I find that even within myself, like I realize that I want to live in the world that I'm imagining. And I realize, and this is the hard part, is that I might not get to. That's really hard to say, I'm going to go put in all this work for this world that I can't really live in. And so a lot of people inside the Christian nationalist world will hear what you're saying and be like, yo, give me a faster track to getting back to the Constitution. Is there a faster track? And I guess the other side of this is based on what you understand about Christian nationalists. I guess, can they fit inside of does a Constitution allow for somebody like a Christian nationalist?
Well, of course, because I'm frankly a Christian internationalist. My Christian faith, I want to influence the whole world.
That's
I want to share the gospel and make disciples of all nations, right? And so anyone and everyone in America gets to live out their faith. That's the beauty of the First Amendment. So absolutely, there's room for that. You hit something so important, though, man. The fact that people don't want to do the hard work. And I'll use the exact opposite of a Christian nationalist, because he didn't even claim to be a Christian. He was a intelligent design believer, but he's one of the few. Only about 10 of the founding fathers that were not Christians did not believe in the divinity of Christ. Most of them did believe in the hand of providence, believe God was involved in our daily life. But even this one out of the 10 non-Christians didn't necessarily even believe in that. Thomas Paine. Here's what he said in An American Crisis. He said, what we obtain too cheaply, we esteem too lightly. In other words, when you don't have to pay the price for it, when you don't have to sacrifice for the next generation, you don't appreciate it. And that's exactly what's happened. That's why tough times make for tough men make for soft times. For good times make for soft men make for tough times. We've had it so good for so long. We're spoiled rotten. We're lazy. We're fat and happy. And we've never had to pay the price. We never had to invest. We've enjoyed the good times and we've gotten soft. We don't want to even spend the time to read the Bible every day or spend the time to study history and find out where we came from. Only 9% of Christians actually are in God's word every day. So if 91% of Christians are not in the instruction manual for life, how are they going to know how to treat their employees or their employer? How are they going to know how to choose their leaders, or if they are a leader, how to serve and treat their neighbor the way they want to be treated? So we're just lazy. Now that's changing because we're entering the tough times and people are starting to say, man, this hurts. You know what? We've got bad results. Why? Because there's been bad inputs. Well, what are the good inputs? So they're asking questions and they're paying attention to guys like you and folks like Patriot Academy for the first time in their lives. So we actually have a real window of opportunity to engage them, but we got to tell them lives, fortune, sacred honor. This ain't free. You have to be engaged and give of your time, give of your money, and put your reputation on the line, or else you're going to be handing your kids tyranny. And Thomas Paine also said this. There was a Tory that was at a tavern that he was hanging out at, and the Tory said, well, as long as there's peace in my day, I don't care. And Thomas Paine wrote in An American Crisis, he said, basically said in my country boy language, what a jerk. Why would you say I would rather my kid have to fight a war than me? No. A real man says, bring it on. I'll fight the war in my day so that my children can live in peace. And we need more people that are willing to stand up and say, I'm going to do the hard work. And guys, come on, man. We're not even asking people, I'm not asking anybody to take up arms. I'm not asking anybody to die for freedom. I'm asking them to live the freedom they've already got. Give me 2 hours a week. Give me 2 hours a week hosting a Constitution class. Start donating 2% of your income to candidates or causes or organizations that are fighting for freedom, and share a post once in a while and put your reputation on the line. We got it so easy. If people aren't willing to do that, they don't actually care whether or not their kids live in freedom.
That's simple.
Wow.
I think one of the pieces of the Christian nationalist conversation, though, and this is I think it's been seen in the rise of the Trump phenom, the make America great again, America first, this kind of thing, is And I think I know what you mean, Rick, and I know I certainly know what you mean, Knox, when we're talking about Christian internationalism or intergalacticism or whatever.
Yeah, come on now.
Come on. I know what you're getting at, but I think part of what's happened, though, is over the last 50 years, kind of this post-World War II consensus has been a growing globalism that has threatened to swallow up America. And you have this, this mass, immigration crisis on the southern border. You've got, these treaties and foreign entanglements, which is part of the bloat that we have in our country. And so I think some of the Christian nationalist conversation is actually saying we want to return to a sort of a very basic nationalism. That the basic building block of international politics is a nation. And America was formed as a nation, a Christian nation, as it turns out, a Protestant Christian nation. And so part of a recovery of the values that our country was founded on is a recovery of an identity that we are a nation and that there's something that binds us together culturally, religiously, historically, and so forth. And so obviously as Christians, we care about other nations. We want all the nations to come and bow before Jesus. But as a building block, as you said before, you start with your home. You start with your church, you start with your city, you start with your county, then you maybe are able to get to your state. But then we don't want it to just sort of blur into this international, slurry. The next step would actually be we want our nation to honor Christ. I just wonder, like, if we don't affirm that, I mean, just saying I'm a patriot a patriot of what? I mean, are we a patriot to a nation? And if so, then we are some kind of form of nationalist, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not a patriot of the world. I'm an American patriot. There's a reason for that. And even biblically, when you go to, a lot of people ask me, are we going to save the country? Is it going to fall apart? And I say, I don't know. I think we got a 50-50 chance, to be honest. But even if we lose it, even if we go into tyranny, everybody's got a coffee mug or a pillow with the verse from Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you. Everybody loves that. Where were they going? 70 years of captivity. And what did God say? Build your houses, marry your wives, plant your gardens, be a blessing in the nation where you are, and to the nation where you are. So I think here we are in a free nation. We have an even better opportunity to be a blessing to our neighbors, a blessing to the nation in which we're in. And without question, if we're not a nation, if we're now going to just be one world government, we all know that's not good. That's evil because, frankly, we get outvoted at the UN and around the world all the time anyway. America has been a blessing to the world because of our national identity, because we actually stand for something. I mean, come on, guys. We used to say it in our comic books. What's the Superman theme? Truth, justice, and what? The American way. Yeah. That used to mean something. It was a value system of blind justice, equal justice under the law. That's a biblical idea. Neither Jew nor Greek, rich or poor, treated the same in court. What are we doing now? Social justice means that everything depends on the color of your skin, what church you go to or don't go to, your political affiliation, whether you're rich or poor. You're going to be treated different in court depending on those categories. That's evil, wrong, un-American, and anti-biblical. So absolutely, it's a national identity. It actually means something to have American values. When we say American exceptionalism, or an even better example, Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address, he said it's from these honored dead that we can take an increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. What did those people die for? They died for the cause of American exceptionalism. That is a unique value system that made America the greatest nation in the history of the world. And when we water it down with all this world, I'm just a citizen of a world and all that nonsense, we absolutely decimate the strength that comes from having an identity as a nation. And we don't know anymore because we stopped teaching civics. We stopped teaching our children what makes America unique in the history of the world. That's what solves the civic ignorance, is civic literacy. Teaching them those truths, teaching them how to apply it. That's how you restore the good outcomes. You change the inputs and you get the good output.
Rick, we live in Idaho. We all live here. We're all present in Idaho right now.
Thank you.
We're in northern Idaho.
Except for Gabe.
Yeah, except for me. I went and spoke at a conservative event down in Boise last week, and everyone in the room was from California. There might have been some local Idahoans that grew up here or whatever.
Yeah, but a lot of people from California.
But 90% were from California. And they're like so motivated in Idaho for it to not go California. But local Idahoans are clueless or something. I mean, they aren't motivated. They aren't really, doing things like conservative events and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't really know what to do here in Idaho. It's like the Californians that move in, they're awake. It's the Idahoans that are pretty apathetic and everything. And we also have Idaho's weird because there's this battle going on between the rhinos and the newer conservatives, and they're fighting and all this stuff. But the rhinos, the new conservatives got their angst and stuff like that. But the rhinos have already lost Boise. I mean, Boise's purple because of how the rhinos have governed these last 20 years, 30 years. I don't know if there's really a question there for you. But
I got a question.
Well,
I mean, isn't that what has happened in Texas?
Yeah.
And can you help us?
I wish, man. Texas is not the conservative bastion that people think we are. We got a real battle going, but we're winning some battles. I think we may win maybe as many as 20 new House seats that are our kind of folks, man. These are patriots. They're lions. They're not going to back down. And we may even throw out our current speaker, who's a total rhino. We may beat him in the primary. Was it this week or next week? The next 2 weeks. So that's a big deal to actually beat the Speaker of the House, who's spending millions of dollars in his own race.
And got Rick Perry's endorsement.
Say again?
And he got Rick Perry's endorsement too.
It's and Perry's a friend of mine, and I've done a lot with him over the years. But big mistake on it. There's no reason for him to be backing Dave Phelan right now.
Yeah.
Whole nother topic. But you're right, man. And we do a Patriot Academy Leadership Congress there in Boise every year. So we'll be up there later in June. I can't remember the exact date. But you're not alone, man. There's a lot of red states where this is happening, and it's back to Thomas Paine. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. So if you're in a state and you think it's red and you think everything's conservative, and you guys are just like Texas, your governor shut you down just like our Republican governor did here in Texas. Greg Abbott locked us down for 9 months. Ridiculous, absolutely absurd, the things that happened. You guys might have been involved in the deal up there where all the guys got arrested for having a church service outside, and not social. Just the insanity in red states shocked me I did not expect that in 2020. That honestly shook me for a little bit. It was like, wait a minute, I thought that was our base. And now you got all these pastors out of California, like Rob McCoy and Jack Hibbs and a bunch of these other guys that have been the ones to stand up and be strong and fight back. So we're kind of like you. We've gotten a lot of Californians, a lot of Washingtonians, a lot of people moving into Texas. And they're honestly more conservative than a lot of the people that are here. So some of the best people in those states are moving into red states like Idaho and Texas. I think that's the natural flow of where this thing is going to go. We're already doing what you mentioned, Mark Meckler, a great friend of mine. He calls it the great decoupling. And I think that's natural. People are going to vote with their feet. I haven't given up on those states. If God gives revival to the land, I'd love for us to save all 50 states. But I think in the long run, unless there's a true revival, we're going to end up with blue states and red states because people are going to vote with their feet and self-separate like that. And that's okay, as long as each state has the freedom to be itself. And we're not getting a president that tries to force all 50 states to be the same. We've never been the same. We have to be allowed to be different. You guys in Idaho need to decide what's best for Idaho. We need to decide what's best for Texas. And if California wants to be goofy, let them be goofy. But we got to have that separation and let each state decide for itself.
Well, Gabe was actually one of the guys that was arrested. So you're talking to him. Yeah. But
you were. Well, then I watched you on YouTube, man, when you got arrested. Yeah. Well, congrats to you. Thumbs up. We can compare mug shots, only you were doing something righteous. I wasn't. Anyway, I'm glad.
Two categorically different.
Hey, Rick, if people want you to come and run a clinic for them, do you do that? How do people find you? What do they do to have you run a clinic for them?
PatriotAcademy.com. If they want to be a Constitution coach, we give away our classes for free. We train people to be coaches for free. Like I said, we've had 1 million people go through it. Our goal is 5 million biblical citizens before the 250th birthday of the nation. So we got 2 years and about 60 days right now. Or no, 35 days. We're getting down to it. And so we're getting down to the wire, guys. I think at 250, that's when most nations fall apart. And so we're either going to have a resurgence and a revival and a renewal in the country, or it's going to break up and we're going to be done. So our goal is 5 million biblical citizens, 10,000 candidates running for local office all over the country, and 100,000 Constitution coaches. So we need to grow really by 400% again before that anniversary. And I think we'll see a resurgence. So all of that's available at patriotacademy.com. You can come spend a week with us here at the Fredericksburg campus and be a legislator, do a handgun defense class, learn the Constitution. You can host a local class right there in your community all over the country. All of it's available at patriotacademy.com. And the youth program in Idaho, I think we still have some slots available. That's 16 to 25-year-olds for 3 days at the state capitol.
That's great. That actually I love that goal. Yeah. That's exciting.
Awesome. patriotacademy.com. Go check it out. Rick, thank you for joining us on Cross Politics, sir.
Yeah, man. God bless y'all. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.